The heart of anxiety is believing that a certain action or activity or decision is going to take us to a state where we can't cope. So, for example, right now I have a certain email to write, a decision to make, and the fear is that the result of that decision will put me into a position where emotionally or physically or financially, spiritually, I won't be able to cope. And as a result of not being able to cope, in some way I'll be destroyed or eliminated. I think that's where anxiety comes from when we're children, and really where it stays as we become adults. And so as I go through my life, I go through my day, there's all sorts of stimuli and opportunities to take my attention in this direction or in that direction. And some of the most productive directions that we can go in will end up provoking some kind of anxiety by their very nature, because there'll be the areas in which there's the most opportunity, but also the most risk. And that risk will be only a psychological risk. And what other kind of risk is there, provided, you're not talking about doing anything stupid? So the experience of anxiety or procrastination then is coming to the realization that there is something productive to do here. And yet, in the body, there's a kind of resistance. For me, I feel it sort of in the stomach. It's like pressing against a solid wall, and that wall is not yielding. And as I try to move forward in an area, it's like being physically pinned in place. I like trying to step through a solid object, and that object doesn't yield. And there's a way to get through this that I've learned, and I think a lot of people do this if they experience anxiety. I'm talking about mild anxiety here. I'm not talking about panic attacks or anything. We'll get onto that in another video. But if you just feel mildly anxious about taking a certain action step, the way that I've done this in the past is to disassociate. So maybe there's I'm writing an email and I'm afraid about the kind of response that I'm going to get. So I cut off from my body, my emotions, and I just sort of power through and just do the thing anyway. And then kind of recollect, hopefully, those feelings or those emotions later. And the issue with doing this is that over time, this habit of disassociating develops, and it can become so commonplace that a lot of the time we just walk around in this disassociated state where we're leaving a part of us, usually our emotional part or our sensitivity, kind of in another dimension, or like another place and time. And you can see this in people's eyes, and you'll see it in your own eyes if you look in the mirror and you really feel like, am I fully whole? And I don't really have a clear answer for the way through this, but I think that the feeling of anxiety, on top of the physiological causes like poor nutrition or health practices, it comes from this state of basic trust, which is the feeling that whatever happens to me in my life, I will fundamentally be okay, that the universe is a benevolent place, not necessarily in the circumstances it kicks out, but in the spiritual sense that I am, I'm whole and I'm okay, whatever happens, even if I fall to a health problem, or I lose all my money, or my partner cheats on me, like, spiritually speaking, that I will be okay. My consciousness will pervade, and I'll be able to manage. So there's a kind of change in identification from physical circumstances to spiritual circumstances that precedes, I think, a relaxation of this efforting and this anxious response. And one decision that I try and make is just not to worry about anything, like just to accept the worst thing that can happen, and then just to proceed from there, like to expect the best, but prepare for the worst. I guess that's the cliche that people use. But it really works. And then just to sit there, in the moment, say, for example, of writing a difficult email or making a difficult phone call, I just thinking there's not going to be a time in the future where doing this thing is going to become any easier. And just to move really slowly, like typing out the words on the computer, this is what I'm going to do now. And just going through like step by step, feeling the anxiety, noticing where it is in the body, like having a kind of friendliness to it, coming back, keep going. And then rather than kind of cutting off from this feeling, just like listen to it, have a friendliness to it, and a sort of lovingness to it as it's trying to help you prevent danger. And that way, this relationship with anxiety can develop over time, a kind of bond, a communication can form, and these different parts of ourselves start to become like teammates, right? Because if you're constantly kicking anxiety out of the team, like leaving it on the bench while you play the game, it's not going to develop as a player, and it's not going to learn how to like pass the ball and to work with these different parts of your psyche. So that's my invitation with this video. Let me know your thoughts if you experience mild anxiety. Like I said, I'm not talking about panic attacks or that kind of extreme anxiety, which I think is actually a little bit different, which I'll get into on another video. If you're interested in me talking about that, then let me know. But I'm talking about this kind of low grade procrastination type of anxiety that I think a lot of people experience. So if you have any thoughts about this, maybe you disagree with me, maybe you think I was stupid, but just let me know in the comments, and thanks for your time.